Welcome again to C. Anderson English. This is the Dramatic Monologue second part video. There are links to other videos and the previous video on this page. And if you like this video and find it helpful, please subscribe and please give the thumbs up. Me and Mr. Browning right here would really appreciate that. So, these are some of the features. We talked a little bit about, using examples in the last video, what the features of a dramatic monologue are. Now, for me, there are four main features. Now, clearly, it's called a monologue, which means that there is always one speaker. And this is why I've emboldened these two words. This speaker is often talking to another person, but the second person doesn't respond or speak. So you have this kind of listener, this implied listener, who is often the reader or us as the audience. And so it creates this dialogue, this two-way interaction. It's ironic because it's not really an interaction, but what it helps to demonstrate is the dominance of that particular speaker, because they want you to listen, they need you to listen, they want to get something off their chest. So that's one of the key features. Okay, secondly, the reader or the audience views the conversation and learns about the speaker's personality through the language. So the language is really key, because that's where you get the true insight into the character's state of mind and what they are thinking and how they are feeling. So we glean insight into their personality through what they say and how they say it and what they talk about. Point number 3. The monologue is often set an important part of the speaker's life, or, more importantly, it's near a specific event. So it depends. Some of the more archetypal monologues will have this important stage in the speaker's life, but some will just be based around an event. Some won't be around a specific event at all. So this is not always the case with dramatic monologues. Number 4, though, which is in red, which is a clear indication that I think it's important, is, I think, one of the key features that you have to understand if you really want to take something about understanding dramatic monologues, is that the speaker unwittingly reveals their personality. They don't mean to reveal what they are truly like, but they do because they can't help themselves in some way. They don't think that the reader is judging them, and there's this tension. I was always taught when I was a student, there was this tension between what the speaker is trying to convey and what they actually convey. And this, for me, is the key criteria, really, for a dramatic monologue. And then this is often true as well, number 5, that the speaker uses a case-making, argumentative tone. So you often find that. There are other things people can, there are other features that people may think are features of dramatic monologue. I'm not arguing that they're not, but for me, these are the top 5, really. And sometimes they're not always relevant, so you won't always see this, I've said before. And I put the blood splat here because they're often the true archetypal, the Browning dramatic monologues, which I think many people would use as hold up as symbols of dramatic monologues. The Porphyria's Lover and My Last Duchess. They're often very dark. They obviously give you insight into very dark personalities. So I think that's part of the fascination why dramatic monologues has been so enduring. So let's have a look at a dramatic monologue. I've looked at some talking heads in part 1, but for this one I want to use a well-known dramatic monologue, 3 dramatic monologues by UA Fanthorpe, who's actually my favourite relatively contemporary poet. If you haven't had a chance already, please read her poetry. She really is fantastic. Now, this is based on a painting by Uccello, and you have the 3 stereotypical characters. You have St. George on his steed, he's that heroic character. You have the dragon, and you have the princess. Now, some key features that are mentioned in the dramatic monologue is that the dragon talks about how the artist has an obsession with triangles, and you can see here, this is a sort of triangle here. You can see that this kind of shape here, and Uccello apparently was well known for using triangles in his work. So there's that kind of insight you get from that. You've also got the fact that this dragon here, he mentions how he has 2 feet. Most dragons would have 4. They'd have their claws as well. And she's on a string. She seems to be holding him on a string there. So these are some of the visual features that the dragon refers to in his monologue. So here you go. Let's have a look. So this is not my best side. It's by UA Fanthorpe. And there are 3 monologues in this poem. But I'm just going to look at the first for time's sake, and I'm actually going to let UA Fanthorpe have a go at reading this. with her friend Rosie, so I'm going to be quiet and just let her get on and bring it to life.
Not my best side, I'm afraid. The artist didn't give me a chance to pose properly, and as you can see, poor chap, he had this obsession with triangles, so he left off 2 of my feet. I didn't comment at the time. What, after all, are 2 feet to a monster? But afterwards I was sorry for the bad publicity. Why, I said to myself, should my conqueror be so ostentatiously beardless, and ride a horse with a deformed neck and square hoofs? Why should my victim be so unattractive as to be inedible, and why should she have me literally on a string? I don't mind dying ritually, since I always rise again, but I should have liked a little more blood, to show they were taking me seriously.
I couldn't have read that better myself. So you have this fantastic insight into this dragon. Now, before I sort of annotate the poem, what you also want to think about is what are the stereotypes of these particular characters. Well, clearly this man here is supposed to be the hero. This man here, or the dragon, I'm assuming it's a man, they usually are male, is the villain. He's a monster. And she is the stereotypical damsel in distress, the kind of helpless feminine character. And I'm not glorifying these presentations of these particular characters. This is a poem about subverting the stereotypes that exist in society, but it just happens to use these particular examples. And before you have a look at this poem, you want to think about how would you expect a dragon to talk? What would your expectations be? You'd expect it to growl and all that kind of behaviour. But we'll see what Fanthorpe does in terms of her presentation, how she subverts that stereotype. So let's have a look. So it says, not my best side, I'm afraid. So you have this nice kind of conversational tone here, I'm afraid. The artist didn't give me a chance to pose properly. So it takes on this idea that this dragon has actually sat for this painting, which is humorous. And as you can see, poor chap, he had this obsession with triangles, so this slightly patronising tone. He had an obsession with triangles, so he left off 2 of my feet. I didn't comment at the time, what after all are 2 feet to a monster? So what you get here is that he's sensitive. He feels put out by the fact he hasn't got his 4 feet, but he doesn't say anything because he's aware of the artist's feelings. But afterwards, I was sorry for the bad publicity. So the blue highlights, we're trying to get some insight into this presentation. For bad publicity, why does a dragon need publicity? Why, I said to myself, should my conqueror be so ostentatiously beardless? So he's not happy that his conqueror or the hero is so young. And ride a horse with a deformed neck and square hooves. He's observant. He's really clearly aware of how the characters look. Why should my victim be so unattractive as to be inedible? So this is part of the feature of the dramatic monologue. And why should she literally have me on a string? Question. I don't mind dying ritually since I always rise again, but I should have liked to have a little more blood to show they were taking me seriously. So he has high self-esteem. He's self-conscious. Okay. Forgive my writing. So we have the features of a dramatic monologue that we've just talked about. Do we have one speaker? We do. Do we learn about them through the language that they use? He says things like I'm afraid. He says poor chap. He has a good vocabulary, ostentatious. He's aware of figurative and literal language, inedible. So he's educated as an educated dragon monster. So interesting language. Is an important event? Not necessarily. It seems to be a painting. It's a well-known painting. So it's looking at it as if he's having a sitting, which is humorous and ironic and quite creative. So you could argue that. I'll give it a question mark there. And does he reveal? Is there a tension between what he reveals and what he's trying to present? And that's for you. You might want to pause the video and think about that. Is there something that Dragon's trying to portray that is at odds to what he does actually portray? Now, what I would say about that is he's trying to show that he's casual and doesn't actually mind his presentation, but the words and phrases he uses show he clearly does. He talks about how his conqueror is beardless and too young. He talks about bad publicity. He talks about being taken seriously. He wants more blood. So we know that he's really, truly upset by his presentation. And is he being monstrous? No, he's not. He's being articulate. So it's an interesting, subversive portrayal. And it's a good example of a dramatic monologue. And it's a good example of demonstrating the features of a dramatic monologue. I love dramatic monologues, I truly do. I think they are my favourite types of poetry. And here are some good examples. If you don't know some already, these are the archetypal ones, I would say. You've got Porphyria's Lover, you've got My Last Duchess. This is an absolute masterpiece. This is a masterpiece too. The River God, that's a good example. The Cleaner, UA Fanthorpe, I think she's a fantastic proponent of the form. Havisham, Carol Ann Duffy. And then I love this. It's by Eminem. It's a song called 97 Bonnie and Clyde. It's from his first album, the Slim Shady LP. And if you look at this song, it's a dramatic monologue too. So these are some good examples of dramatic monologues. If you're being taught or you're studying them at the moment, these are things that you can look at and they might help you. Please subscribe to my channel. The links to other videos are there, and links to subscription and thumbs up are there. I hope this has been helpful. Please let me know. Leave a comment. I'd really appreciate that.